There's a lot of jobs in the crime and justice and criminal space that we've obviously explored on our Deviant summer school series. But one of the ones we haven't gotten to is what we're jumping into today, and that is the job of a private investigator. And I think we all sort of have probably a vision in our head of what a private investigator looks like and, does. Cheating husband, cheating wife calls and has a PI, figure out what's going on. But it's actually a lot more nuanced than that. And we're going to talk today to a guy by the name of Ken Childs, who is just that. He's a private investigator, private detective, and unlike a lot of PIs, has never been a police officer or a detective. So he comes to this solely 100% from the side of being, private. But what's interesting is that he does a lot of work in the insurance space, in the corporate space. Companies hire him to sniff out insurance fraud and things like that. And his stories are really, really interesting because there's a lot of things that go on that I don't think any of us ever really anticipated. So I hope you'll enjoy this conversation. He not only is he a PI, but he's a PI also in Los Angeles, which if you're aware of the world, there's a lot of weird things that go on in Los Angeles, and anybody that works in that space, in the crime, law, justice space in California and in Los Angeles, is going to see and experience some interesting things. So it is no different with Ken Childs. Here is our conversation with him on this week's Deviant Summer School. Enjoy. Ken Childs, I want to first say thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate you giving us some time. You're a private investigator. And I think that there's a lot of times what people think private investigators do versus what private investigators actually do, right? So for the sake of our audience and sort of in the vein of our Deviant Summer School series, what is sort of private investigation 101 from your perspective?
What private investigators actually do are background checks, locating witnesses, witness statements, surveillance. That's kind of our bread and butter, surveillance. There are also maybe some special niches out there where I've got a buddy that just strictly does intellectual property, and he's globally known. And what's involved in that is, let's say, like undercover purchases of fake Viagra or Nike golf club that's knocked off, Levi jeans. So he specializes in that. So it's kind of like a pretty big world out there. But the misconceptions are, when you're watching TV and you see us planting audio devices, hacking cell phones, what did I see? It was like on Bosch recently. And, there was like a listening device that was the size of like a Tic Tac. It's like, thanks for just scaring the hell out of the public. That's great.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you are the rare private investigator that was not a detective or a police officer, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So, because in understanding detective work and private investigative work, a lot of that, I imagine, involves navigating state laws, federal laws, all of the various sort of like ways those don't intersect, right? And knowing that and staying inside the lines, as it were. Talk to me a little bit about when someone calls you and says, I've got a problem, I need to hire you to do X. And I know that there's a million different things you guys do, but take me through the steps of like, what's the onboarding? What's the process for a private detective?
Yeah. So our onboarding, basically, like if you're just talking about a cold call out of nowhere, I got to just basically suss it out. I no longer do the like, oh, hey, I'm looking for a lost relative. I just, with today and how much fraud and deception and sketch is going on and stalking is going on, I just like pump the brakes right then and there. I'm not doing that because sadly, another impression is like people think we know it all, right? And the reality is I'm taking a cold call. All I know is I'm talking to Brian, I'm talking to Lisa, and I kind of have to take their word for it, So with that, I'm not going to really do anything that I find a little off-putting, right? Like I'm not going to just sell someone's information. If they're insistent on it and you can tell that they're legit when you say, okay, well, I'll look up so-and-so for you, but I'll make contact with them and pass your information on. And then at that point, like, oh, okay, that's legit. And I'll give them a little price and we'll get started. But then when it comes to other cases, let's say like insurance fraud or whatever, like just because of how many years of experience I have, like I know within seconds if the call's legit and we just move forward.
You mentioned your buddy that does intellectual property. What are sort of the different lanes in the private investigation space, and which one do you occupy generally?
We specialize in insurance defense. So that's going to be, or maybe I should take it a step further or broaden it a little bit. We specialize in surveillance. We find you and we follow you. And then with that, we document your day-to-day activities, right? And so that's like what we prefer. So whether that's, insurance fraud, cheating spouse, actually like some criminal or intellectual property theft, we can end up doing some surveillance there as well.
So when you say surveillance, and apologies because I'm going to use the frame of reference that so many of us do, which is TVs and movies, is that, you're in a car and you're following somebody for, 2-3 miles, then you stop off and you have somebody else jump in behind and do the find and follow. Like, walk me through how does that work? How does surveillance work in that way?
I wish, man. It's literally, and it's funny because we'll get beaten up in court too, right? They're like, isn't it true? And it's like, well, it's not at all, actually. So when we do surveillance, we're literally in a car. We all have cars that are very, very popular brands, Hondas, very affordable, gas efficient cars. That way, because we got to blend in, so it's all about blending in. And we're literally in our car, hunkered down, and we follow you. However your day unfolds, sometimes, once you're off and going, so are we.
So what happens when someone sees you and realizes you've been following them?
I tend to operate on the lighter side of things, right? Like if we're driving, suddenly I see they're checking the rear views, or maybe they just made like a really funky U-turn. I would rather take a step back and assess, like, are they feeling me out? And then if so, I'd rather just slip out of there for many reasons. Like one, I don't want to jeopardize the case, right? Like, why would I do that? Two, I don't want to put anybody in a bad situation, right? Because, let's say, or now they're just suddenly scared. They don't know who's in that car behind them, or maybe you got someone that's like full of little testosterone. He's about to jump out of the car and rip you out of the driver's seat, so let's just avoid that altogether and come back another day. I do know of other investigators that they will push it, that's just not the way we operate, but they will push it. And I've known investigators that get caught like quite a bit. And to me, that just says like, you're not doing a great job.
You're forgetting the private part of the private detective job description.
You screwed up the stealthy part of stuff.
Right. So when you're doing surveillance, you're following someone. Is this a scenario where you have, folks back at your office, you're communicating with them about where you are? So there's sort of an understanding at all times that this is the situation you're in, and people know where you are. So they know, if you suddenly disappear, is there communication with like a home office while you're doing all of that?
A little bit. So I have a business partner, and she and I kind of hold each other accountable. And so we don't do it in a way where we're like in fear, right? This is what we do. So I'll just like check in like, oh, hey, we're over here. We're in downtown, or, just basically keeping tabs. We're not necessarily like, oh my gosh, if you're scared of doing surveillance, you shouldn't be doing it.
Right. So
there's a little check-in, but not in the way that we're like, oh, hey, for my personal safety. Maybe a little bit on my business partner side, because she's a smaller woman, and I definitely want to be protective of her. So maybe there is a little bit of check-in there.
Yeah.
But then again, she's strong. So
yeah. Well, I was wondering if it's just from a standpoint of like, if you've got multiple people involved in a case and you're doing a surveillance operation of some kind, everybody sort of being on the same page and being kind of plugged into what's going on.
With regard to that, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, if we do have a 2-3 man surveillance going on, half the time nowadays, back in the day, it was like walkie-talkies. Beep, beep. Hey, we're, whatever. Yeah. And now we're just literally like earbuds, cell phones, and minimal talk, because what we're while we're driving, we're giving kind of the coordinates of like where we're coming up on. Whoever has lead is going to be the one speaking, right? Like, oh, we're in the number 1 lane, headed southbound, blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, blinkers on, we're exiting XYZ, so that way everybody kind of falls in line. And then once we're mobile, we do tend, sorry, I get it, what you were asking a moment ago. We do tend to like slide in here and there. So we'll have one investigator out on the lead. They'll go for a couple minutes, couple miles. And then when it's appropriate to change, then someone else will slide in. They'll step back. Or maybe if they can, sometimes they'll parallel on another block, circle back around and catch back up. So yeah, sorry. So that's kind of how we do operate. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you used a couple of phrases earlier that sounded sort of like PI speak, right? You're talking about the lane and like, I guess what I'm trying to get to is like when you go on a job with multiple people, what's sort of the template that you start with and then you adjust as the surveillance goes?
Typically we're all kind of on the same. I mean, most of my people and other contractors that I use with me, we're all on the same page. So, we're all sitting around bored, probably talking trash to one another. And the second things get mobile, everybody shuts down. They're all quiet and ready to go. We'll have someone parked over at one intersection because they're going to likely exit that way. We'll have someone with eyes on them. So then that way we could say like, oh, hey, Ken's exiting the house. He's wearing black polo, blue jeans, white sneakers. And he just jumped into like car with California plate, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, get ready. And then, okay, once things get moving, it's like heads up people. I may not move. The lead may not move at that point. And then we'll call it out to the other investigators. The other investigators may close in, follow out. The lead will then slip back around and catch back up. Because that's the last thing you want. I mean, when you're doing a one man, it is what it is. That's just
sure.
Roll. But then if you're doing 2-3 man, 2-3 person, then once that car backs out and takes off, you don't want to like,
yeah. So how do you know a job's going to be a 1 or a 2 or a 3 man? Like what kind of goes into the deciding factors of like why a job may require more than just kind of, a stakeout, hanging out, doing it as a 1-man situation?
So I would say like my experience would dictate that. Let's say we're in Beverly Hills and you have these massive estates and empty roads and big curbs. So that's definitely going to require a 2 or 3 person, right? Because, it's just like they're empty streets with big curves. So you got to have someone sitting way back to recognize the car coming down or down the hill or out of the cul-de-sac or whatever. Or let's say they live on top of the hill and there's like multiple ways that they could exit. So now you need someone over here and someone over here.
Oh, right. Yeah.
To catch up. And then the second person will then, whichever way it goes, one will catch up with the other.
Yeah.
So then that's how you would perform surveillance that way. And then maybe if anything kind of sounds sketch or if an insurance company straight up says like, hey, we've worked this person like multiple times, we haven't gotten anything, or hey, actually they've been a little hostile, like they picked off another investigator, they're a little hostile. Then at that point, we'll definitely try and get a 2-3 man team out there.
Have you ever been in a surveillance operation that's gone sort of, I don't know if haywire is the right word, but gotten a little bit dicey?
Yeah, years ago, oddly enough, and it wasn't even the person that we were watching. So we were in a very bad neighborhood, and this person was claiming injuries like he couldn't lift. It was really, really like a small amount. Let's just say for sake of conversation, he couldn't lift 5 pounds, and his activities were he couldn't bend, stoop, blah, 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 right? The laundry list. And I remember him being in the front of his home with like a pickaxe. I mean, this guy was like, like working, getting to work and a lot of shoveling. And, that's over 5 pounds, and the activities like far exceeded what he was claiming.
Sure.
The only way we could capture film was he lived in like this, like a little T intersection, and there was no cars parked here, but there was a little alleyway. So we were in the alleyway shooting across these 2 houses into like his home here, right? Into his front yard. Well, there just so happened to be someone in the alleyway that my investigator was like watching, he's filming, he's watching this way, and he didn't really like pay attention to behind him. So suddenly this like guy full of bravado comes pounding on his car. So the investigator's like trying to shut it down, like, hey, it's okay. It's okay that I'm here. And then the guy was relentless. Like, he wouldn't give up. Suddenly, another person then comes, we just hear screeching. Actually, I was there. We heard screeching, and this big like SUV comes swinging around the corner, like straight out of TV, and just practically rams the investigator's car, just slams the brakes, barely misses the car. So at this point, the investigator's got to go, right? Like, obviously, if we stick around, it's going to tip everybody off. These people, they're already inflamed. There's no way of backing this out. So my investigator leaves down the alleyway. It's the only way he can go. I remember looping up behind him. Now this like super aggro and this like big old SUV Bronco thing, it's kind of chasing us both down. Like, it was out of control. I personally was cool to stop and see if this guy wanted to talk. You know, I can handle myself. Like, that's fine. But he was in no mood, man. The guy was just driving so wild that I'm thinking, for our safety, he's going to hit us. We just got to go. We eventually got on the freeway and just, you know, kind of got him tangled up in traffic, and we slipped out. So yeah, I mean, people get crazy aggressive out there. You'll see in the papers all the time. You know, there was like, somebody says the wrong thing, and before you know it, there was a PI maybe 3 years ago who got ripped out of his car because the house he was in front of were like these two aggressive men, and the investigator, I don't know why, just was not willing to leave his situation, right? He was just, for some reason, in his mind, he had to be there. And these guys come out, like, real polite, like knock on the window. He opens, he's trying to be cordial, like, oh, hey, you know, I'm like kind of working this XYZ gig. I don't know what he really told them, you know? And then his son opened the passenger door, and then that startled the investigator. Then the father opens the driver's door. Now they start pummeling the guy.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah.
So they start beating him down, you know, and as awful as that sounds, I mean, I've been doing this forever. And so what I'm hearing is like, sadly, hey, bud, there were several indicators. There were several things that you missed, you know. A, you should have been kind of like a little more discreet. Obviously, you're just sitting in your front seat, just hanging out. B, you should have seen these guys kind of pacing back and forth, looking at you. C, like when they approached the car, I don't know why your doors weren't locked. You know, you could have cracked the windows. You could have told them a little story, or you could have assessed, or you could have just left. B, the door's open. Why aren't you starting the car and hauling ass out?
Right.
What happened, buddy? You missed, in my opinion, you missed 7, 8, 10 signals.
Yeah. So we mentioned at the top that, you know, you may be the first private detective I've talked to who does not have a background as a law enforcement officer. And I've always wondered this, actually, what your experience is like when your work intersects or rides up alongside law enforcement. Because I think sometimes there's always like this sort of a push-pull between law enforcement and private investigators. Has that been your experience, or, you know, what is that dynamic like working in concert?
Yeah, like the bigger egos prevail. I don't care. I mean, I got to be honest with you. Like, I don't care. I perform my job. I do well at it. And if you're puffing your chest bigger than me, what do I care, man? Like, I crushed it. I'm getting paid. Or if we're going to like go to some sort of scene, I know with the intellectual property stuff, they work with law enforcement much more than I do. And with that, it's kind of a little bit of a partnership, because at that point you're working with an intellectual property expert, right? So yeah, clearly you're going to listen to that expert. But then when it comes to, you know, serving the search warrant, kicking in doors, all that stuff, yeah, you better believe that that investigator is kind of riding the coattails of that operation. And then they're going to dictate, like, certainly like what product is what, right? Because they're that expert. So yeah, at that point in time, there is like a good working relationship. When it comes to the insurance fraud, that's kind of later in the game, right? Like we do our job, then it's going to be like a DA referral or like an insurance fraud referral.
Yeah.
Then we're going to get like a quick call interview. What do we have? Stuff like that. And then, you know, at that point in time, it's pretty much the insurance companies and the detectives will kind of be in that later stage of wrapping it up by the time they bring us in.
Yeah.
So we don't really like work side by side. We kind of like, we're the ones that like kind of got that ball rolling.
Yeah.
Then they'll piggyback on it and really do what they got to do.
Yeah. I'm really interested in the surveillance part of this because, like I mentioned before, because you're private, you've got a lot of things law enforcement can do wiretaps in certain ways, and there's they have access and ability to do a lot of things. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't have because you are bound by the fact that you're not law enforcement, right? And
Right.
so, are there some examples you can give of like, you're not allowed to do that, but law enforcement is. So you have to figure out sort of like a different way through.
Yeah. So mainly it would be all the wiretapping,
Yeah.
right? So law enforcement can do all of that. Law enforcement can serve search warrants, kick down doors. Law enforcement can do that. Like PIs cannot. PIs can't arrest somebody, but they could as if it was a private citizen's arrest, right?
So this actually exists. It's not just something we've all heard about as an urban legend.
Right. But why would you? I mean, you're taking on all the legal responsibility. And if you're wrong,
Yeah.
you better believe, like, not only are they suing you, whether it's right or wrong, you're going to eat it.
Yeah.
So
So
I can learn to know.
well, right. It's an interesting point because can you kind of give me the basics of like a citizen's arrest? Like, how does that work? Like, if I wanted to arrest you as a citizen's arrest, what do I need in order to do that?
You need to see me commit like a pretty strong misdemeanor and or a felony.
Okay.
But a misdemeanor has to be done in your presence. The felony has to be under like a little bit of a lower bar. Like, let's say you hear gunshots ring out at the liquor store and you're out front and you see the person exit the liquor store with the gun. I mean, not that you're going to probably jump on that, but at the same time, it's a reasonable assumption that that person's has robbed the liquor store and gunshots ring out due to them. So you could technically take that person into citizens arrest that. I mean, obviously that's a pretty extreme scenario, but that's just to kind of make it clear.
I wanted to circle back to some of the challenges, if you can think of any, like some of the challenges you have that law enforcement doesn't, because they obviously sort of have, a fast lane to a lot of things, and you just have to kind of follow the rules, as it were, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not even about the rules. It's basically like time and money, right? Like, yeah, you're dealing with law enforcement. They got nothing but time. If they're following someone, they're following with like 6, 7 people on the ground plus a chopper. When it comes to the private sector, you're looking at them. I'm the whole team. I'm the A team. That's it. Maybe we'll go 2, 3 man deep. But then again, you're talking private. So people have to have the budget to do that. The insurance company has to want it, has to have the budget to do it. And typically it's like, hey, we got a $3 million, lawsuit, and it's cost us like XYZ. Here's 2 days of surveillance.
So I have to ask, how did you get into this business?
So the long story short was I was trying to do the community college work kind of thing in LA, right? So I'm in Pasadena doing my thing. And I don't know. I kind of came to this realization that like, man, it's kind of got a little slower than I'd hoped. And as I was just reassessing, like, what am I going to do in life? I was kind of going the law enforcement route. And one morning, it was like Sunday morning football. This guy came into the bar, and there may be maybe like 10 people in the bar. And this guy comes in and he's blasted. Like, he's already just wasted. And there was one girl just kind of like hanging out, like probably waiting for a boyfriend or something, just hanging out. This guy just, tattoos, cut here, teardrops, like the whole, like it was nasty. It was like right out of a movie. And he goes like right up to her, and he's all about her. He can barely like form a sentence. So I tried to slip in. I was trying to be cool about it. Like she was like my girl kind of thing. And, the guy was like not feeling it. And just real quick, we just started exchanging words. And so a couple, I kind of threw a couple punches. I slapped him like right out of the movies, right across the face, threw him in a chokehold, drug him out in the middle of the street. When I came back in, there was a table, a group of 4 guys, and they were like, hey, buddy, we got to talk to you. Like, sit down. And that was literally my intro into the business. I had no idea private investigators even existed. I didn't know what it was. And I literally started like following week.
So you were just being a hero.
I guess, yeah. Like I was lucky, it was like kind of two factors. The guy was blasted, A, and like B, I kind of know how to take care of myself. So, so it was like, it worked, thankfully. It worked out. And yeah, and they offered me a job. And day one, I'll never forget. It was like 3 a.m. I'm meeting someone in some creeped out van, brought my lunch with me, and we got to this like apartment in the desert, like a 2 hour drive, 3 hour drive. It was like crazy. We get there at like, 5:30 in the morning, and this big barrel dude comes out of the apartment with a lunchbox, and off we go, man. Like before I know, we're out in the middle of the desert, like literally dirt road, middle of the desert. And yeah, we got caught that day. So then we're working, and I couldn't let it go. Like I was like, no, give me your, like, the guy that I was with stopped, let the guy drive off, which is smart, right? Because like you're in the middle of the desert, you'll eventually figure out where he's going, just take your time. And so then I was like, give me the camera. There was a huge construction site. So I literally was like low crawling in the bushes, leaned the camera off into the shrub brush and just hit record and just got this guy like out on this massive land mover, which was exactly what he was saying he couldn't do. So he left a construction company due to injuries. And then here he is like working for another construction company, doing exactly what he's saying he can't do. So I couldn't let that go. I got video of that. But then like my partner, my like trainee, like my guy, he got picked off because someone was picked off. Like someone spotted him and started confronting him.
When you say picked off, cover blown, essentially.
Cover blown.
Yeah. Okay.
Cover was blown, so I'm like out in the bushes like a freak filming this guy. And in the meantime, like I didn't realize my trainer was getting harassed by another crew. And so we had to like wrap it up.
Yeah. And I imagine trying to do surveillance work in the middle of the desert is difficult, being that the key to surveillance is being able to fade into the background and not get noticed.
Right.
So I'm visualizing like one of the scenes in like Breaking Bad when they're out in the middle of the desert and there's nobody around, and like how are you supposed to stay concealed? Yeah, I imagine that was a challenge.
Ditch your car and hoof it in.
Yeah. How long ago did you start doing this?
I started a couple weeks before my 21st birthday. So I've been doing it for 27 years now.
So what's the, and I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask anyway. What's the biggest change or the biggest difference between doing PI work now versus when you started?
It's exponentially harder.
Harder?
Exponentially. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Why is that?
20 years ago, like I could park like literally at your curb and just film you, and today people are so paranoid.
Yeah.
We've got cameras. They're paranoid. These scumbag plaintiff attorneys, they're literally telling, you get an injury, a little auto accident, a work accident, and they're literally telling you like minute one, watch out for investigators. They'll even show clips of video. This is what they did. This is how they canned our last client. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, this is how this stuff unfolds. It's known that we're out there. Where of the yesteryears, I could literally like pull out in front of your house 3-4 times in the day, and you'd just be like, I don't know what that's about. No big deal. Today, I'm parked blocks away.
Yeah.
I only move in if I feel like there's some activity that like I have to capture.
Yeah.
It's not just you coming and going. If you're working in your front yard or playing with your kids or whatever that, like whatever it is, whatever the goal is, if I feel you're doing that, then I'll get in.
Yeah.
But if not, I'm more of the mindset of I'd rather let the day unfold.
Well, and actually you raise an interesting point in that, like, obviously the biggest change sounds like technology, which is great, but also everyone's got a camera. So it's harder for you to stay anonymous and sort of fading in the background, right? Everybody's got a Nest. Everybody's got a Ring cam. So you as the surveiller wind up being surveilled in some ways, right?
Yeah, or people will post up on Nextdoor like, what's this car XYZ doing over here? They haven't moved in 4 hours. Does anybody know them?
Right. And so your cover is blown in no time.
Like, that's me.
Yeah, so you probably have to have guys, hey, we're going to have to switch out cars every 30 minutes or something. And
well, I think if you just just stay hunkered down. If no
Yeah.
one's stepping out and double checking on you, chances are you're probably still okay. I I park I park far enough back where, again, like I don't feel like the people that I'm surveilling would just step out of the house and go like, "Oh, look at that car." Like I'm far enough back that you know that I feel like we're fine. Same thing with my partner; she's under the same mindset too.
So I think you said at the top, you don't really do missing people cases anymore. Is that correct?
We'll do missing people, but it's the whole like, "Oh, I lost touch with a college girlfriend." It's like, no, creep, you didn't.
Right.
She lost touch with you.
So it's not, somebody goes missing for 2 weeks and you have to, scour the globe finding them.
Yeah, that we're not up to doing. If they're missing, let's say like we just did one a couple days ago where some young gal, she's 30 years old, parents were kind of supporting her dream to move to LA. She moved here 10 years ago. She kind of progressed mentally down like a little bit of a downward spiral. Like things aren't working out for her. She's living in her car. To me, it sounds like either early onset schizophrenia and or bipolar and or maybe meth or fentanyl usage. Thankfully, we took that case because of like the area, and then the parents knew a little bit more of kind of where she's mentioned a few places that she has frequented. So for us, that's much easier. And then because of like when you're homeless, there's like habits and stuff that they
Mm-hmm.
kind of have to do. So yeah, we found her we found her day 2, and thankfully she looked really good. She was like health wise, like her face was clean, her car was taken care of. So like even though she had her car clothes in the car, it was still like she wasn't so bad, so that was all like trashed, right? And she went to the gym. Obviously, she was in there for like 30 minutes. So that tells me she probably showered up, got freshed up, getting her day started. So, you know, we communicated that to the parents. So something like that we'll find. If someone's been missing for several years, but they know they're kind of in this area in LA, that we can attack. But if it's something like, oh, hey, our niece, we haven't heard from her in 24 hours, like, what can you do? And it's like, sadly, outside of harassing their friends, like nothing.
Yeah. Working in journalism, there's a lot of searching and digging and investigating and various degrees of that. And in the years that I've been in this business, like I've learned a lot of tricks and, ways to do stuff. Right. And so a lot of that, especially like in the last 10, 15 years, has been enabled by social media, and people digitally exist online, whether they know it or not. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that's done for your business and what you do, and whether it's made it harder or easier when we live in a world where seemingly everybody exists out in the open, at least digitally?
So that's interesting. That's a great question. When it comes to it's in our business, it's referred to like open source intelligence, right? OSINT. You may have heard that reference. So then actually I have a gal that just exclusively does that. And she works for maybe a handful of investigators. And she's really unique in the way that she has a disability. So she can't hear and she doesn't speak. So her niche is literally online social searching. And she's amazing at it. So yeah, we find people that way. We also can give like a nice report if they're active, like, this is what they're doing, what they're up to. When it comes to criminals and identity theft, that's different. So when we start running data, and what I mean by data is like your LexisNexis, your, TLO, Del Point, blah, 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 whatever the companies are that like sell this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now that information shows up vastly different. So let's say you look me up and you're going to see, okay, well, here's Ken. He's had a couple of apartments. He's got a house, like, and you look at it and you look at the timelines and you're like, oh, okay, that like lines up. I'm sure he's here, no problem. That's what a normal person looks like. But if you're looking at someone that's into like theft or credit card theft and or they're like a fraudster or scammer, then they're going to be 30 years old or 25, and they're going to have this laundry list of addresses, and they're all current. Boom, 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 boom. Irvine, LA, Newport Beach, LA, blah, 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 blah. And it's going to be like a couple big clusters. And they do that because A, they probably don't want to get caught. B, they're they've got to legitimize these addresses so they can mail something there, right? So they did some credit card theft. Now they got to buy something with that stolen credit card, mail the project to a legitimate address, which will be like friends and whatever. And so they can go pick up that device and then sell it on Craigslist or whatever they're going to do, right? So then that's what, and then like an identity theft person looks like, a credit card theft person looks like. It's just like a hodgepodge of what the hell.
Yeah. So you can tell based on the report what we're dealing with.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. In your time of doing this and this work, I imagine you've learned a lot about people and the way they behave.
Yeah.
What's an example of something you've learned about the way people behave? I mean, you see people just doing, all kinds of things. Like, are you in the phase of your life after doing this job where you're like, you don't trust anybody ever? Or, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, when it comes to that, I mean, I'm open and easy, man. Like, like right out of the gate, we're cool. If we lose trust or there's some off vibe, then I'm cool. I'm out, it's not like, or let's say like when I was single, it's not like, oh my gosh, are they cheating on me? Like, like, what do I care? What do I care? But like, I'm a normal person. I'm not going to hold people to like what I see is all sketched out,
Yeah.
It's like, but if I sense something, then I'm out. Yeah. But I'm not going to hold them to that. But what I have learned with human nature is that, let's say for like cheating, for example, like if you really feel like it's going on, chances are it is, especially women. Like their intuition, like if they feel like their man is out there cheating, let me tell you, she's got you. Just boil it down to how to get you.
Yeah. So they're usually right when they think that's what's going on.
Yeah. If I get a call from a female client, I'm like, okay, well, let's dial this in.
Yeah.
And when it comes to men feeling like women are cheating, I kind of feel like half the time the man has something going on and they're kind of projecting that on to her. So there's a little bit of that. And then, then we'll just like see how that unfolds. When it comes to, let's say like a hostile termination and they really think something's going on, hell yeah, hold on tight. I'd say maybe 60-70% of the time they're going to stay hunkered down in their house, right? 3 a.m. we're just going to see the glow of the cigarette on the front porch, and then you got the other like 40-50% who can't let it go. They're going to start driving by the business. They're going to drive by the CEO's house. They're going to, I've seen someone show up to work and just start slashing tires with a hunting knife. God, I've seen that. So their immediate like little past is could likely predict their future.
Sure. Well, I always like to end our conversations for this series. We talk to a lot of cops and detectives and FBI guys and various investigators of various colors and stripes. And I always like to know, of all the TV shows and the movies that portray the work that you guys all do, from your perspective, what's the one that's the most spot on and accurate?
Oh my gosh. You caught me off guard with that one. What's the show with, what is it? Like the dude, what is he? From like way back, maybe the 80s or something like that, where he was just like kind of an asshole. And he was just, like a little, would just bluntly ask like offensive questions and people would,
I don't recall. Must have been before my time.
He's the dude, man. He's the dude. Like that actually is like a private investigator.
The dude, not the Big Lebowski. I assume you don't mean the Big Lebowski.
That where he's just like, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You mean the language of the Big Lebowski is kind of the way
he like carried himself. It's like, that's pretty legit right there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to ask the questions.
Yeah. You just got to be blunt, I guess is what you're saying.
Unfolds, right?
Yeah.
So like to me, off the top of my head, I would say that like, because all the other shows are they want you to watch. They're making it salacious, we have GPS trackers out there, but like we're not going to use them. They're illegal. Like 9 out of 10, we can't use it, and then breaking into someone's house, like the scene where they got the lock picks in their mouth and they're working on the lock, boom, pick that lock. Hell no, that doesn't work. You're going to get yourself slapped with a couple felonies. Let's say, okay, Magnum PI, you got that evidence from the file cabinet. It's going to blow the case out of the water. Awesome. You know what the first thing the other attorney is going to ask? How'd you
What's
get
that?
that?
Yeah. How'd you get it?
Where'd you get that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that doesn't work. So it's all meant for TV, that stuff.
Yeah. Ken, I really appreciate your time. It's an interesting job that not a lot of us get a chance to kind of delve into with people. And I'm sure that you're a hit at parties. I don't mean that sarcastically. I mean, people are like, oh, you're an investigator, a private investigator. Tell me all your stories.
Whoa, stories. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the time. It was an interesting conversation to kind of hear what it's like in your world because it's not one we're used to. So I really, really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.